The reality is that Muslims and those who still follow the indigenous religion, if you like, of the West, can really get on because we're close, but we're not identical. One of the stories that Muslims cherish, which really represents the first moment of Muslim encounters with Westerners, because the Quran's polemic really is not against Jews and Christians very much, it's against the indigenous pagan religion of the Arabs. Where the Quran really gets angry is in its prophetic denunciation of what the Arabs are doing. It has good things to say about Jews and Christians. Sometimes it criticizes Jewish and Christian doctrine, but the anger is directed against what its own people are doing. But the first encounter that Muslims really have with Christianity is when some of the refugees who've been persecuted by the pagans in Mecca go to the neighboring Christian kingdom of Ethiopia and appear before the king. And the Meccans send an ambassador saying, hey, we've got some good trading deals, send them back. These people are troublemakers. They're following a false prophet. We'll deal with them. And the Christian king, who is really favourably portrayed in the Muslim sources, so that the Prophet ﷺ, according to most Muslim scholars, actually prayed for him when he heard of his death, listened to them, and what did the Muslim ambassadors say? This is Ja'far and Abi Talib and some of the other great Sahaba. They recited these verses from Surah 19 about the Virgin Mary, because that shows how close we are. That precious thing that Christians would think is only ours, love for the Blessed Virgin, right there in the scripture of the people who supposedly are the absolute opposite of what it is to be Western. So he recites this, and the eyes of the Najashi, the Negus of Abyssinia, fill with tears, and he draws a line on the ground, and he says, the difference between you and us is only as much as this line. And he sends away the Meccan negotiators empty-handed. That's a mark of wisdom. That's a tolerant ruler. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ was right to assume that Muslims would be well treated there. But there is a line. The Negus of Abyssinia is not saying it's the same. Our doctrines are the same, because if you listen to those verses, you can see there's a different understanding of who Jesus is there, and that is a real issue between Muslims and Christians. But still, at that very first moment in the history of the engagement between Islam and the West, it's a positive story. The Muslims are doing something beautiful. They're physically very beautiful people, according to the Hadith, and very dignified. And the Christians and the bishops are obviously very impressed by these monotheists who come from this wild, idol-worshipping town. Something interesting has come to them. They're open-minded, open-hearted enough to see that, and the emperor gives them refuge and gives them protection, and says there's a difference between us, but it's like that. That's a wisdom that not too many of us, Muslims or Christians or secularists, really are comfortable with. We like to see things in terms of either or. Very seldom do we think in terms of both and it's even more awkward and perhaps untidy to believe in terms of, well, in most cases both and. In a few issues there's going to be either or. Muslims and Christians will not agree over whether Jesus was God or not. And on so many other things, including these beautiful, reverent passages about figures that are allegedly at the heart only of the Western story, suggests that any claims, whether made by Muslims or others, about the mutual repulsion of Islam and the West are simply not correct, because the scriptures themselves, by the generosity and good providence of God, simply don't allow us to think in those adversarial terms.